Okay, so criminal law, civil law. We hear these terms thrown around all the time, right? But what's the actual difference between them? You know, the real, fundamental thing that separates them. Well, it's probably not what you think. Let's dive in and get this sorted out. So, to really nail this down, I'm going to throw a few common ideas at you. Think of it like a multiple choice question. One of these statements is the absolute key to understanding the whole thing. See if you can figure out which one it is before we get to the big reveal.
All right, I think the best way to find the right answer is to first get rid of the wrong ones. So let's bust some common myths. I'm willing to bet you've heard at least one of these before.
Okay, first up is this idea that it's all about the money. You know, the thinking that huge, juicy financial losses, that's criminal stuff, and the smaller losses, that's civil. It kind of makes sense on the surface, doesn't it? But is that really how it works?
Yeah, nope, that is a total myth. I mean, think about it. A massive multi-million-dollar corporate fraud case? Absolutely criminal. But then you can have a billion-dollar contract dispute between two giant companies, and that's purely a civil matter. So the bottom line is, the dollar amount has nothing to do with it. It just doesn't define which type of law applies.
All right, let's check out our next option. What about this one? The idea that criminal law is what happens in the courts, you know, with judges and all that, while civil law is all handled privately, behind closed doors.
Well, that's not quite right either. Just think about all those messy contract disputes, or personal injury claims, or even just arguments between neighbors over a fence. Those are all civil cases, and they end up in court all the time. The court system is absolutely essential for sorting out both criminal and civil issues.
Okay, this next one sounds a bit more complex, a little more lawyery. It uses this fancy term, parties in privity, which is usually about who's involved in a contract. It sounds pretty official for sure, but is this the big fundamental difference we've been looking for?
You know what? This is way too specific. While that concept might be important in, say, a particular contract case, it's definitely not the main thing that separates the entire world of criminal law from civil law. We're hunting for the big idea here, and this ain't it.
So, we've ruled out the size of the financial loss, we've ruled out whether or not it goes to court, and we've ruled out that technical legal stuff. So what's left? What is the correct answer? Are you ready? Because here it is.
And there you have it. It's not about the money, and it's not about the courtroom. The entire difference, the whole shebang, boils down to one simple but powerful question. Who was harmed? Let's unpack that a little.
This right here, this is the core of it all. On one side, you've got criminal law. This is about acts that are considered offenses against all of us, against society as a whole. And on the other side, you have civil law, which is all about resolving disputes between private parties, whether they're people or companies.
So what does it mean to be an offense against society? Well, it means the act is considered so harmful that it's basically a wrong against the entire community. It threatens our collective sense of safety and order. And that's exactly why the government, or the state, steps in to prosecute. It's not just one person's problem, it's considered everyone's problem. It's the people versus the accused. Now contrast that with a private dispute. This is much more personal. It's between party A and party B. One person, who we call the plaintiff, says that the other person wronged them, and they're looking for a remedy to make things right. And usually that remedy is some form of compensation, like money, to fix the harm that was done. Okay, so who cares, right? Why does this difference actually matter? Well, it matters a lot because it gets to the very purpose of the law. It shows us that these two systems have completely different goals. They're trying to accomplish two totally different things. All right, let's nail down the key takeaways here. Criminal law, its goal is punishment. It's about penalizing actions that harm the entire community. Civil law, its goal is remedy. It's about making an individual whole again after a dispute. In a criminal case, it's the state versus an individual. In a civil case, it's one individual, the plaintiff, versus another. And that boils down to the ultimate purpose, maintaining public order versus finding a private resolution. And just to leave you with a little something to chew on, what happens when a single action is both a crime and a civil wrong? I mean, take an assault, for example. That's definitely a crime against society, right? But it's also a very specific personal harm to an individual. So you can actually have two separate court cases spring from that one event. Which raises a really interesting question. Which one should go first, the criminal case or the civil one? And why? That's a tricky one. Thanks for digging into this with me today.